Welcome to the Kent Lap Podcast.
My oldest is 7, so no, we're not directly talking about the need to show up better than the next white person or to just get the opportunity because they're too young at this point. But I do find myself being very focused on them excelling and doing the best they can, whatever they're doing, with the mindset of at some point having that conversation, right? But right now it's not about America, what's true in America around opportunities and biases and so forth, but it's about them excelling and whenever they do. So,
and do you want them to excel because they can, because they should, because if they excel, maybe they can be in positions of influence or authority and help direct this country in a better way? Like what's behind the motive to excel? I'm curious.
I would say kind of all of the above. I mean, I want them they should, right? If we're going to do anything, you want to do it to the best of our ability, to honor the Lord first, right? And so, whatever it is, and so that's my mindset.
Yeah.
And I think, at least in my home, in my upbringing, every generation, we want to do just a little bit better than the generation behind us, right? With education, economics, opportunity, things of that nature. And I think that's what I would strive for my kids as well.
How have you handled that pressure personally, of feeling like you needed to be a little better? That's a lot of pressure for whether you're a kid or an adult. You said you feel that pressure.
I think
how do you handle that?
Well, I think you have to handle it, right? Because I think there's no choice. I mean, for me, that's what's necessary, unfortunately, right? And so it's like, if I go left or go right, the right way is to handle the pressure, step up to it and deliver, because the other way is, not very good. It's poverty.
Yeah.
It's pain. It's broken families. It's in this country, could be jail, it could be death,
could be
right?
Violence against you.
Things of that nature. And so, yeah.
And do you mean by that, if you don't live, say, in a nice community or a nice development or the good part of town, or have a good job, or those types of things, that violence may happen against you? You might not be safe. Is that what you mean?
Not even that, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, so talk through that.
Yeah, you want to go first?
I was going to say no. I mean, I think it's education really helps, one, with opportunity and having visibility to something different than poverty, right? Or just that, really.
Okay.
I mean, that's the first thing that comes to my mind, because if you live in poverty, you're more likely to potentially go to jail, and more likely to have a family that's broken, and you don't have the opportunities, or you don't see the opportunities, have the visibility to other parts of the world or what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Because you're kind of stuck in this in this box, if you will.
Yeah.
And the world we live in America, we look down on people.
Yeah.
In that box.
But I think it's also hard too, because at least based off of the conversation that you were alluding to before, that idea of having to be better in order to have access to the same opportunities, I think I know that's something that's been drilled into me ever since I was a child. And I know same thing with my husband. Jake, he's African American. He was, his family is from the United States, but that's something that we could both very much relate to. And I think what's hard about that, what comes to mind for me is the idea of being above reproach. Because I think, unfortunately, if you are say, for instance, if you are just as good or not somehow obviously better, and I use air quotes around that, then you have to make it like it's easier. Sometimes there's social networks that we don't have access to because of the history of the United States and the relationships that have been formed, the wealth that's been kind of made, that people have had access to in certain communities, typically white communities, that Black people don't have access to. So there's, even when you think about like maybe jobs and things like that, people tend to hire who they know, or maybe who they rely on references, and those networks could really count for you. And if you have someone who it's like, okay, well, this is my friend's son or daughter, but this person, you know, say they're like a Harvard grad, blah, 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 then it's like, you know, you put someone in a position where they're going to have to really argue if they can even be forced to be held accountable for whatever decision making. And it gets tricky because, again, if someone's running a business, at the end of the day, it's their prerogative. But I think this pushes up against this idea in the United States that it is a meritocratic society, and that if you do well, if you show yourself to be good, then the clear reward is, you know, getting what you deserve for the efforts that you expended. And that's not always the case, especially if you are a person of color. Typically, if you are Hispanic, if you are Black, if you're Native American, if you're those kind of things, and even in some Asian communities as well, because there's a whole other thing about race there. But as far as the violence, it's hard because, like, as you guys, I'm sure, have been hearing, whether it's Breonna Taylor or Ahmaud Arbery or just people, tons of people who, and these are only the ones who have gotten Twitter hashtags over the past year or even 5 years. Whenever anything happens, especially if we're thinking about clashes with police, then one of the things that quickly comes out is like, okay, well, what were they doing that was threatening, or what were they doing that was whatever? And you have to be like, okay, well, sometimes in order to gain sympathy, it's like, this person, she was an EMT who was just coming home from a shift. I know it gets tricky because, like, again, her boyfriend was involved in trying to defend their home and things like that. Or I think there was a case a couple of years ago with a therapist who was trying to help a special needs patient of his, try to kind of coax him out, and the police fired on him. And it's just kind of like, what is, again, like, do I need to be a person where I can, like, I have a whole bunch of friends, white, Black, and otherwise, who can vouch for me that I was a quote unquote good person, so that we can make a case for why this act of force on the behalf of, let's say, police, again, since we're just sticking on this right now, was excessive and unnecessary, and sometimes triggered by the fact that because of the color of my skin and because of my gender, my husband has to contend with this. Travis has to probably contend with this way more than I do as a Black woman. But again, we still see terrible things happening, woman, man alike. But it's just, you have to be above reproach so that when things happen, you can just be like, no, it wasn't that they raised their voice. No, it wasn't that they didn't, you know, take orders from citizens who were telling them to stop jogging, or why they were, like, you have to make up all these things. And so I think that better than, it can apply absolutely to the way you perform in school so that you can get the job or whatever, or it can apply to, okay, how you need to be seen when people are writing your obituary because somebody reacted in a problematic way, and now there's all these representation kind of politics that are going on that have to do a large part of the time with because of the way that you look.